Bedtime Dungeon Crawl Segment 1. The first descent, the morning sun hadn't yet broken through the canopy of ironwood forest when Marcus stood at the entrance of the Ember Hollow dungeon. His breath formed small clouds in the cool air. He adjusted the worn leather straps of his pack, feeling the weight of his starting equipment. A basic hammer, a few iron ingots, and a bundle of firewood he'd gathered at dawn. Quest accepted. Forge your destiny. Establish a blacksmith operation within Ember Hollow dungeon. Reward blacksmith class evolution. Unknown. The notification blinked softly at the corner of his vision. Marcus smiled. Every blacksmith in the kingdom worked in town forges, paying rent to guild masters, following their rules. But Marcus had heard the whispers in the tavern that the old dungeons, long cleared of their most dangerous creatures, held something more valuable than gold. They held space, freedom, and the residual magic in their depths could enhance crafting in ways surface forges never could. He took his first step into the darkness. The stone passage swallowed him gradually, the morning light fading step by step behind him. Marcus's hand found the cool dungeon wall, tracing the ancient carved runes as he descended. The air changed, grew warmer, heavier, tinged with the mineral scent of deep earth. His footsteps echoed in the measured pace he'd learned from years of working the bellows. Slow, steady, rhythmic. You have entered Ember Hollow Level 1. Recommended Level 1-5. Current occupants. Minor. The first chamber opened before him. A natural cavern, perhaps 30 feet across, with a ceiling that disappeared into shadow above. Bioluminescent moss clung to the walls in patches of soft blue, green light, just enough to see by. Marcus's trained eye cataloged the space immediately. High ceiling for ventilation. Flat area near the back wall, close to the entrance, but far enough for safety. This could work. He set down his pack carefully, the sound of it settling against stone oddly loud in the stillness. Then Marcus began his first task. Task 1. Surveying and clearing the workshop space. Marcus moved through the chamber slowly, his hammer held loosely in one hand. Not expecting trouble, but ready nonetheless. He'd learned caution in his apprentice years. The dungeon was classified as cleared, but that didn't mean empty. Small creatures still made homes in these places. Tunnel rats, rock mites, sometimes a stray slime that had wandered in from deeper levels. He tested the ground with his boots, feeling for soft spots or hidden holes. The stone here was solid. Volcanic basalt, he thought, which was perfect. It would hold heat well and wouldn't crack under temperature stress. He knelt down, running his hand across the floor's surface. A notification appeared. Skill check. Surveying's apprentice. You have identified quality foundation stone durability. High heat resistance. Excellent. Marcus allowed himself a satisfied nod. The system recognized his expertise, even at this low level. He marked out a 15-foot square area with chunks of chalk he'd brought, drawing lines on the floor to outline where his forge would eventually stand. The positioning mattered. Too close to the wall, and smoke would have nowhere to go. Too far from the entrance, and he'd be hauling materials through the dark for hours. This spot, about 20 feet from the passage he'd entered through, felt right. Next came the clearing itself. Marcus spent the next minutes moving stones, sweeping away centuries of dust and debris with a bundle of stiff grass he'd tied together. The work was meditative. Sweep, pile, carry to the chamber's edge. Sweep, pile, carry. His breathing fell into rhythm with the motion. Small things scattered as he worked. A tunnel rat chittered at him from a crevice before disappearing deeper into the dungeon. A cluster of rock mites, beetle-like creatures no bigger than his thumb, scurried away from the light when he disturbed their hiding spot beneath a flat stone. Experience gain 25 XP progress forge your destiny quest 3%. The numbers were small, but they appeared. Every task counted. Marcus had learned that much from his apprenticeship. Mastery came from 10,000 small actions done right, not from a few grand gestures. He cleared the last of the debris and stood back to examine his work. The chalk-marked square of clean stone floor looked almost ceremonial in the dim moss light. Empty now, but in his mind's eye, Marcus could already see the forge that would stand here. The anvil, the tools hanging in neat rows, the glow of heated metal casting dancing shadows on ancient walls. But first, he needed light. Task 2, gathering luminous moss for sustainable lighting. Marcus had read about this in the dusty volumes of the guild library, back when the old master librarian had been more interested in his afternoon nap than in watching what apprentices were reading. Luminous moss, the kind that grew in dungeons, could be cultivated if you harvested it carefully. It would grow slowly, but once established, it provided steady, fuel-free light. Perfect for a workshop that might operate deep into the night. He approached the nearest patch on the eastern wall, moving slowly and deliberately. The most glowed brighter as his hand neared it, a defense mechanism he'd read to startle predators. Up close, he could see the intricate structure, tiny fronds layered upon each other, each one pulsing faintly with its own rhythm, like 1,000 tiny heartbeats. Skill check, herbalism, novice, luminous moss identified uses lighting, alchemy ingredient secaminer. Cave cricket bait. Marcus withdrew a small knife from his belt. Not his good smithing knife, but a utility blade he'd brought specifically for tasks like this. He needed to harvest the moss without killing it. The trick, according to those old books, was to take only the outer layers and leave the root structure intact. He began cutting carefully, working the blade under the fronds and lifting them away from the stone. The moss came away in soft, glowing sheets that he laid carefully on a spare cloth. It smelled of minerals and something else, something ancient and alive. Each piece he harvested continued to glow steadily, even separated from its home. The work required patience. Rush it, and you'd tear the roots and kill the patch. Take too much, and the remaining moss wouldn't have the strength to regenerate. Marcus took his time, working his way around 3 different patches on the chamber walls, taking about 1/3 of each. Experience gained. Plain XP Luminous Moss harvested 12 units. Herbalism skill increased. Novice a level 2, a level increase already. Small, yes, but progress nonetheless. Marcus carried his glowing harvest to the cleared forge space and began arranging it along the edges of his marked square, pressing each piece gently against the stone floor. The moss began to attach almost immediately. He could see tiny root threads extending from the underside, seeking purchase in the microscopic cracks of the basalt. In a few weeks, these patches would have spread, creating a natural perimeter of light around his workshop. In a few months, if he tended them right, they'd provide enough illumination to work by, even in the deep dark of the dungeon. But for tonight, for the work ahead, he still needed fire task 3. Building the first fire and creating a temporary forge. Marcus gathered the bundle of firewood he'd brought, carefully selected pieces of ironwood from the forest above. Dense, slow burning, and capable of reaching the high temperatures needed for smithing. He'd also brought a small pouch of charcoal, saved from his last day at his old master's forge. He arranged stones in a circular pattern at the center of his marked square. Building up a simple fire pit, the stones would reflect and contain the heat. Later, much later, this would become a proper forge with bellows and a hood and a chimney venting to the surface. But for now, this would do. The stones clinked softly as he placed them, each one chosen for size and stability. Building the circle was like solving a puzzle, finding which stones fit together most securely, which ones would support the weight of those above. Marcus's hands knew this work. How many times had he built practice forges during his apprenticeship? How many times had the master torn them down and told him to start again, to do it right this time? Skill check. Construction as apprentice, basic fire pit, completed, quality, adequate. Marcus could live with adequate for now. He arranged the firewood in a careful structure, kindling at the bottom, larger pieces above, creating channels for air to flow through. Then he struck his flint against steel, sending sparks into a nest of dry tinder he'd prepared. The sparks caught. A tiny flame emerged, hesitant at first, then growing stronger as it found fuel. Marcus fed it carefully, adding larger pieces only when the flames were ready for them. Never smother a young fire. Let it breathe. Let it grow. The light expanded, pushing back the darkness of the chamber. Shadows danced across the walls. The warmth touched Marcus's face, and for the first time since entering the dungeon, he smiled fully. This was the heart of blacksmithing, the fire. Everything else was just preparation for this moment. Experience gained for 10 XP progress. Forge your destiny quest, 8% new skill unlock. Fire management's novicate. He let the fire build, adding his charcoal once the wood had burned down to a bed of glowing coals. The temperature climbed. The dungeon air began to circulate, drawn by the heat. Cool air flowing in from the entrance passage. Warm air rising toward cracks in the ceiling he hadn't even noticed before. Natural ventilation. Perfect. Marcus pulled his hammer and one of his iron ingots from his pack. He wouldn't make anything complex tonight. This was just a test, a first step. But he would make something. He placed the ingot at the edge of the coals, watching as the metal began to glow. First a dull red, then brighter orange-yellow. The color told him everything about the temperature, about when the metal would be ready to work. When the ingot glowed the right shade of orange, yellow, Marcus pulled it from the fire with his tongs and set it on a flat stone he'd positioned nearby as a makeshift anvil. The first hammer blow rang out like a bell in the chamber, then another, and another. The rhythm of it filled the space, steady, purposeful, eternal. This was the sound that had filled Marcus's life for as long as he could remember. The sound of creation, of transformation, of taking raw material and shaping it into something useful, something beautiful. He wasn't making anything specific yet, just drawing out the ingot, flattening it, getting a feel for the metal and the heat, and the way sound echoed in this new space. But with each blow, Marcus felt something settling into place. This chamber, this dungeon, was beginning to feel less like a dark hole in the earth and more like home. Experience gained, FLA 15 XP, level up! You are now level 2, attribute points gained 2 progress, forge your destiny quest of 12%. Marcus paused, hammer raised, and looked at the notifications. Level 2 already. The dungeon's residual magic was boosting his experience gains. He could feel it in the air, in the way the metal responded to his hammer, in the speed at which his moss patches had taken root. This place wanted to be used. It wanted a purpose again. He set down his hammer and wiped sweat from his forehead. The fire crackled softly behind him. The moss glowed on the walls. His chalk marks on the floor outlined a future that was beginning, right now, to take shape. Tomorrow he would need to make a proper trip to the surface for more supplies. Tomorrow he would need to start thinking about water, about food, about the 100 other details that would turn this chamber from a campsite into a workshop. But tonight, he had done enough. Marcus had surveyed and cleared his space. He had gathered light that would grow and spread. He had built his first fire in the deep places of the earth, and he had struck his first blow on an anvil of dungeon stone. Tonight, he had begun. He banked the fire carefully, ensuring the coals would stay alive until morning, then spread out his bedroll near enough to the warmth to be comfortable. The stone was hard beneath him, but Marcus had slept on worse during his apprentice years. As he lay there, watching the shadows dance across the ancient ceiling, listening to the distant drip of water somewhere deeper in the dungeon, Marcus thought about the master blacksmiths in their guild shops above, in their proper forges with their proper tools and their proper licenses. Let them have their comfort. Let them have their rules. Here, in the darkness lit by moss and fire, Marcus was building something different, something that was entirely his own. His eyes grew heavy. The sound of settling coals was like a lullaby. Tomorrow he would continue, one task at a time, one skill at a time, one level at a time, until he had built the greatest forge the kingdom had ever seen. End of segment 1, tasks completed 1. Surveying and clearing the workshop space 2. Harvesting luminous moss for sustainable lighting 3. Building the first fire and creating a temporary forge progress summary. Level 2, quest progress, progressant skills gained. Fire management, novice, herbalism improvement. Foundation established for future development.